Okay, so literary journalism writing. What do we even mean by that? You're not just being personal and reflective, you are, in fact, doing some research. It is fact driven writing, often and usually entailing interviews and a kind of immersion into whatever your subject is. If you are struggling to think of a topic, consider some of the personal writing that you've done, and maybe there is something, a moment, an event, some tie to history that you could do some sort of research on. So maybe you mentioned in passing in a personal bit of writing that you've already done the first time you were able to vote for president. You could do some research on that election and or that candidate, that presidency. You could interview others who lived through that presidency, that era, and collect some sort of, do interviews to collect impressions of that period in our history. I think also you should consider really sit with the idea of immersion. So how can you, in the daily life that you are living, either as a student who's very busy and or someone who works full-time perhaps, how can you find the hours to immerse yourself in anything? Perhaps a topic choice that makes sense would be something related to your work or to your student life. So think about where you can spend a fair amount of time. Think about where and how you could interview someone. An option for this paper, it would be to do a profile of someone. So maybe you could just find a human being who is interesting to you and ask them, could I do an interview with you for my class? I got to write this literary journalism thing. And you could ask some questions. You could video some of the answers, take notes, of course, because you want to be able to use direct quotes. You would definitely probably, if you're doing a profile of someone, want at least one really good photo of them, I should think. And so you could do a profile. You could do some sort of cultural immersion. Maybe you live in a city where there is an area of the city that has a strong immigrant influence of a particular group. You could go do some observations and interviews there. But also, I want to give you in the rest of this video, and it's going to be a long video, I realize that, and only some of you will watch it. If you do, I'm going to tell you something. I think it's very interesting because the rest of the video, once I shut up, is going to be a very delightful human being. Not meaning to imply I'm not. So here would be an example of some notes and interview following in the rest of this video, that is. It will be an example of something I did months ago. I was getting my piano tuned in the house. And the piano tuner is a very affable guy, and he's pretty chatty, and I thought he's also very interesting. And I'm curious to know more about piano tuning itself, but also like the life of a piano tuner. So you go into people's houses, like what kind of weirdness must you walk into? So I ended up kind of randomly saying to him as he was in the midst of tuning, like, hey, could I video you and like put it on my Instagram and use it in the future? And he was like, yeah. Well, he ends up telling a ton of stories. And I like, as he was talking, I would think, oh, we're at the end of that anecdote. And I would kind of like turn the camera off, and then he kind of pause and keep going. So it isn't necessarily the most fluid storytelling you're ever going to encounter, but you get such a good taste of this guy's life. Both, he explains the piano tuning. So consider this for your literary journalism essay. What if you found someone who has a specialized skill in some sort of craft or some sort of area of life, and you talk to them about what they do with that skill in their job. But also, he does end up like telling little vignettes about his clients or customers and different jobs he's had as a piano tuner. So I'm going to throw all of that in so that you can see the kinds of like things that he exposed just by, we're just chatting. And I've just said to him, can I ask you questions? Can I video it? And he was like, yeah. And at the same time that I was like sort of putting my phone on and videoing and then turning it off, I also was typing notes on my phone frantically with my thumbs. So that at some point in the future, my hope would be, have I gotten to it? No. I'm too busy reading all of your writing to do my own. I have this hope that I would write some sort of profile of this guy or some sort of literary journalism piece about piano tuners and the craft of tuning pianos. So think to yourself, like, who can I talk to? Where can I immerse myself a little bit? What is something that interests me? Maybe you've written something about bike riding you've done because you're way into biking. How's about you go into your favorite shop and say to the guys who fix the bikes and sell the bikes, could I hang out here for a while? When you're not busy, could I ask you guys some questions and, like do a little interview about bike repair guys? Do it. So for the rest of this video, I'm going to show you what I did with the piano tuner. And it's just interesting on its own level, outside of like trying to get your brain going about what you might do. It's interesting because you know what? People are fascinating, especially if you manage to like ask a question and then shut up and let them go. So find a topic that that works with your life, but find a topic where you're like, well, I'm so glad I did that because I learned so much. So that's your task for literary journalism.
An international star.
That you are, yeah.
This is not the first time this week I've been videoed.
It's not the first time?
No.
Who videoed you?
Actually, I had a customer. They have a grand piano that she inherited from her mom, and she wanted me to do. I put new hammers on it and install the action this week. And she's out in Virginia, and so the piano's going to arrive out there in about 3 months, and she wanted me to document parts of it. So
I see.
So I was videoing myself.
So you're just used to being the star. Yeah.
The nice thing about when you're doing it yourself is you can look at it and go, that's bad.
Yeah, that's bad. Yeah.
And that's.
This is just you, natural and raw, here today. Yeah. So what are the hammers? When you say you replace the hammers on, what's a hammer on it?
These are the hammers.
Those
here.
are okay. Those are the hammers. All right.
And this is all pretty primitive technology. So hammers are sheep's wool or wool felt wrapped around an inner core that forms a hammer, and a hammer just strikes the strings. So as hammers age, the strings will cut grooves in them, and so what happens is they start to sound harsher or brighter or louder. So the way to think of like an older hammer, as the hammer hits the string, if it's a hard hammer, it bounces off the string really fast. Mm-hmm. If it's a soft hammer, it kind of folds into the string and then bounces back more slowly. The more time the hammer spends in contact with the string, it reabsorbs some of the sound.
Sure.
So
okay.
A softer hammer tends to be a little quieter, and it doesn't excite it. It absorbs those upper partials of the mm-hmm. note. So what that does is it makes a hammer more mellow, and if a hammer is really hard, it tends to be really bright and loud, mm-hmm. and then the brightness and there's a little bit of clash that starts happening in those upper partials. So that's why you'll hear some people say, "Oh, that sounds really tinny to me," or really offensive.
Yeah.
And it's because the hammers there's too many of the upper partials being played. Huh. So it's setting up some clash or some dissonance. So I probably gave you too much.
No, that's good information. That's good.
So let's see if we can do this without breaking the string on very flat.
Very flat?
Very flat. And so I'm through and just increasing tension and doing a very rough tuning. Each string is pulled to about 180 pounds tension. And the total effect of all those strings being pulled to that height is about 18 tons of tension, which is like 9 cars piled on top of this. And as flat as this one is, it's like there's a car missing.
That's a good way to put it.
So as I'm tuning it, what's actually happening is I'm actually compressing the piano. It's actually, so you have to get it, they have to get the tension close so that it's stable. Otherwise, as you tune it, it just goes out of tune. So if it sounds like I'm going kind of fast and not being very accurate, it's because I'm going kind of fast and not being very accurate. Anybody should be able to figure out
Yeah.
what this is. Everything here is animal, vegetable, or mineral. You know, it's right.
Yeah, sometimes with technology it just seems like magic, you know, and this actually seems sensical.
Yeah.
I can see the cause effect.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of levers. So you just have to understand what the levers do and how each part works in its as a lever. So it's basic physics. And theoretically, it'll be in tune with everything else on the planet. So if somebody comes in with their accordion, you can just jump right in, or if you wanted to play with a recording, you could do that. Pianos tend to go sharp in the summer, and they go flat in the winter.
So coldness makes them go flat and
Humidity.
humidity. Okay.
Yeah, the soundboard will expand under high humidity, and it'll push up on the strings and increase tension. So then they go sharp. In the winter, they give off their humidity, and it'll go flat. Temperature also is a factor, but houses don't usually change temperature so much that it's a huge problem. Usually if the piano goes out of tune, there's so much other complaining going on that you don't notice. Is extreme cold usually makes humidity drop to even lower levels, so it tends to sound worse. And then the other thing is the cabin fever part. People are really irritable. It's like,
So they can't stand
like,
it.
I can't even go outside. I sat down and the piano sounds terrible. I can't take this.
The psychology of
You know,
I gotta get this thing tuned.
gotta get this thing too before I kill somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a cabin fever, and it's really funny because the worse the weather, the busier I get. And if you have a bad storm, suddenly I get a bunch of phone calls. And I mean, I don't think that there's a collective, you know. I think it's just the way people are.
Yep.
So it's just kind of funny. I don't know what it is like in other parts of the country, but up here it's real noticeable. So. So it's all good for business, because what you need is repeat business, and you want to be the go-to person, you know, that can solve the unusual problem. You know, when no one else can solve it, you're the guy, because that reputation spreads very quickly. You don't want to be known as the cheapest. You don't want to be known as the guy that yeah, he's okay, you know, or the guy that's. It's surprising to me how many not good tuners there are out there, but almost all of them work second jobs, and usually they aren't. They just simply can't make it tuning pianos because they don't get the repeat business.
But you say you're full-time.
I'm
Like,
full-time,
are,
yeah.
are you doing this for literally 40 hours a week?
Yeah. So for the run up to Christmas, I was booked a month and a half in advance. And then January was mostly booked because UWS does 45 tunings. So that takes up 3 weeks of January plus whatever else comes in. So I'm just starting to get more caught up now. So I'm booked probably 2.5 weeks out with just a few holes here and there, maybe 3 weeks out. So now it's out of tune, but it's not. It's roughly at A440.
Someone's house, or like, what do you mean?
Well, like for example, my last appointment was in a church working on a 9-foot concert grand. And yesterday I was out by Grand Rapids, out in the middle of nowhere, installing a set of hammers, installing a set of hammers on a nice baldwood grand.
Did you have to drive in that snowstorm?
I did.
Oh my.
It was thrilling.
Yeah.
Really nice man. And then you might end up working on an older upright in a person's dining room.
Yeah. And being recorded.
You might end up working on a really old spinet piano with plastic parts in somebody's basement next to a 25-watt bulb and a kitty litter box.
Oh.
You know, you just don't. I mean, it's just weird. I've tuned in barns. I've tuned on hockey rinks. I've tuned out in open air, like for a state fair or for county fairs. I've tuned way out in the woods. I had a lady. They'd bought a logger's cabin, and it was designed to be dragged by a bulldozer, so that the loggers would just drag it along through the woods as they go, and they'd just stay in this.
So it was a movable cabin, like a.
Right.
It was the first RV.
Right.
Builders or something.
Yeah.
It was on big like skids.
And they would just drag it around.
Just drag it around.
And so she was living in this
No,
place now? Or?
she had a lot of property, and before they dragged it out in the woods with their bulldozer, they put a piano in it, and then they dragged it out in the middle of nowhere. And there was like a swamp lake, and she called me and asked me if I would tune it, and I said, "Well, how would I get there?" She said, "Well, we'll have to go on 4-wheelers."
Oh,
So I did. I went on a 4-wheeler.
you don't want to forget any of your tools when when that's the case. Yeah, you
That's exactly right.
bring everything with you. They should have just dragged the house to you.
Yeah.
They probably would have had it too.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Clothes, and I thought, well, I can't think of any good excuse. I have to do this today. And the phone rang, and it was the director of a music camp out on Madeline Island. Mm-hmm. And they needed a piano tuned that day.
Emergency piano
Emergency
tuning.
piano tuning. And I said, well, here's the deal. I said, I happen to have the day off, but first off, I'm in Duluth. I'm nowhere near Madeline Island. And I said, so you'd have to hire me for the whole day, pay for mileage, pay for the ferry out there
Yeah.
and back. And I said, this would be really expensive. I think you could probably find somebody closer and cheaper. And he said, well, here's the thing. He said, you're the only person I've been able to get a hold of. Oh. And he said, we've had a Steinway Grand brought up from the Twin Cities. We paid $5,000 for it to have it brought up. And he said, We are going on Wisconsin Public Radio with this performance. So, are you coming or not? And I said,
And you said,
I said, well, I said, I can't even tell you what this is going to cost you.
yeah,
And he said, we just paid we're paying it.
yeah. In for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah. So I thought, okay. So, the emergency
Yeah. Piano tuning.
piano tuning, and that's why my house currently still is not painted.
Oh, that's a great ending to that story.
I went to this house to tune this piano. It was a single mom. She had a 4-year-old named Nate. And the piano had some issues besides tuning. And like I did with your piano, I kind of like to show people what the issue is and let them decide if I want to fix it or not, especially if it's going to cost anything extra. And as I was trying to explain, Nate was in my toolbox. And I've got expensive tools and the sharp tools, and I mean, he just can't be in there. So I asked him to not be in the toolbox, and he totally ignored me.
Yeah.
And was like, he was either going to break a tool or break himself or something. I mean, it
Yeah.
was. So I asked the woman if she would, maybe she could take him and find something else for
Yeah.
him to do. So he spots the cat. So now he's like playing with the cat, but it sounds a lot more like he's murdering the cat.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, oh, that poor cat.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, shoot, but it's not my kid, not my cat.
That's right.
We're just gonna have to let the cat fight it out for himself. So then the cat spots the open piano and sees it as a good place to hide from Nate. So he tears into the bottom of the piano, and Nate freaks out because he wants to continue murdering the cat.
Yeah.
And so he comes up and he's actually hitting me. And so I look at the woman and I said, okay, this isn't working. We've got to come up with a different plan. So I
Take Nate somewhere.
could you take Nate somewhere?
And the cat.
And so she takes Nate into the kitchen and I don't know why you'd make him hot cocoa on a humid day, but she made him hot cocoa with marshmallows. So, know if you'll be able to tune today. I think you need to come back on another day. And I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that, but and I said, these appointments are kind of hard to come by. Is there maybe? I kind of felt like he showed me a little bit of an explanation. And she said, well, it's Bruno. I said, and she said, it's my dog, Bruno.
Okay, I was gonna guess dog.
And I said, is he sick? Are you taking him to the vet? No, he's not sick. Well, what is it? Well, he's got flatus. So he's gassy.
Oh.
So she didn't want me in the house because the dog was gassy. And I'm thinking, well, how bad could this be?
Yeah.
I said, it won't bother me. I said, I can tune in.
Yeah.
So I'm tuning this grand piano, and Bruno comes in the room, and he goes underneath the grand piano, and I can just hear him down there making music. And oh my gosh, I could not have that dog in the house. I mean, I told her I'd tough through it, and I did, but I thought that dog would be put down. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, no one light a flame. It was terrible. I didn't think that was even possible, but
That it was that bad.
it was that bad.
Wow. There's that famous kids book, right? Walter the Farting Dog. Isn't that what yeah, that's the title of it. song is that?
It's called No Longer a Slave.
I don't feel that I've ever heard it before.
It's or sometimes I've heard people call it "No Longer a Slave to Fear."
Huh.
It's a cool song. I like the song, but I like it in listening to tunings because it just the progression of chords. If anything's a little out of tune, it for some reason it really jumps out at me. It's
Right.
surprising how often I start playing and go, oh,
Yeah,
something's not right.
that's not
there."
right. Huh.
So and it's I used to play a bunch of different songs to kind of get the same effect. And it's funny because people would ask me, what is that song? And I'd always go, I don't know, what was I playing? Because I was
Yeah.
thinking, I was
Yeah, yeah,
thinking analytically like the tuning. I wasn't thinking musically like you're playing a song. Mm-hmm. But I've kind of just gone to this now because the progression covers a lot. So
It's like on the typewriter. What's that sentence? The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy. There's something that uses all the keys on the keyboard.
okay,
There's one sentence that uses all the letters so that you have to it types every, it
Sure.
uses the machine fully in one single sentence.
so it makes
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, no.
So anyway, it's Iverson Pond made an excellent older piano. The modern Iverson Ponds that were made by a company called Aeolian, they were all pretty sketchy. But these older Iverson Ponds, they're actually quite wonderful instruments. So it's always interesting when someone tells me they've got an Iverson Pond, or when that's scheduled, I always look and I think, is this going to be a
Yeah.
sketchy one, or is this
Yeah.
going to be this is one of the nice ones. So
Yeah, good.